welcome to my sanctuary of sight and sound. You're probably wondering, what is that? Well, let me explain to you. This comes from my musical and my artistic background, which I've been working on for the majority of the 6-year degree. And the saying itself actually comes from 2 professors that I met here at UCF. The first one being Dr. Miller. She was getting ready for a performance with the women's ensemble, and she said something that really struck a chord with me. She said, ladies, just remember that what we do today is not just audio, it's visual. And being a musical theater kid myself, that means a lot. Because sometimes we don't think about the visual aspect, we only think about what the audience hears. And that moves on to my art professor. Chris Angel, every morning at 8 o'clock, would say, welcome to the sanctuary of observation. This comes because in art, we're not just copying things. We're using what we see in nature to create our pieces. And thus, I stuck the 2 together, and we have the sanctuary of sight and sound. To begin, we will start in what I call the classical period of my life. And I'll start with Lascia pianga by Handel.
So
To move on with the classical period, what does this entail? This entails borrowed forms, borrowed styles. And speaking of borrowed, I have to admit, with Lascia pianga, I learned it originally by rote. For those of you who don't know what that means, my teacher, Luann Hawk, she would either play it or sing it for me, and then I would mimic it back. Kind of like a big record player. And this very much was the same in my artwork. As you see in the photo above, this was the cover of my sketchbook. It has Superman, pop art, comic book design, none of which were my own. I interpreted them, but it's still all borrowed. Same with the two pieces above. The Maleficent, Disney inspired, also pop art inspired. I really enjoy bold colors, so you see kind of where I start my journey. And then I have the Poison Apple. All of these forms and all of the design elements are things that weren't my own. And as I progress through my career, I start to develop my own sense of style, my own sense of self. And this will move us to the Baroque period. And to start with the Baroque period, I'll be singing Whatever Happened to My Part from Spamalot by Ivor. Thank you. To continue with the Baroque period, I tried something different. I tried something strange, something unique, very much like the Baroque period. I decided to branch out in my musical development. Instead of just singing arias or musical theater pieces that are more classically oriented, I picked something like Whatever Happened to My Part. It's comical, it's punchy, it has a little zing to it. And with this, I also developed my artwork. As many of you know, I've been a cake decorator for a long portion of my life, 10 years to be exact. And I decided, why don't I take something I'm really good at and something I'm inspired by, and mix the two. So I made, up above, a mask out of my own form, and I used my cake decorating tips to finesse and create different textures, trying to create something new, something unique. And my teachers hadn't seen anything like this before, so they kind of kept pushing me in that direction. As you see on the images above, to the left we have a purple mask with the same motif. We have the lines, we have the filigree, I even used some flower techniques. And then on the left, I just kind of went crazy, really pushed myself out there. It was kind of during the Halloween season, and I wanted to see how far I could go. Both of these pieces mean a lot in my journey because it's the progression from taking something that's someone else's and becoming my own. These last two pieces in this section are another example of this. When we do ceramics, there are two types of ways we can bake them. We have hand-built, and then we also have spun on the wheel. Well, I'm not very good at the wheel, but that's what these four pieces are. They're only about this big, but I used the forms from the wheel, and then I even went further with my cake decorating techniques. I decided, why not try new tips? Why not try new textures? So I used these shell borders on the tops. I kept playing around with different designs and seeing how the glaze would fall into the cracks and create new effects. This very much so emulated in my production of music at this point. I really wanted to find the cracks, that I really wanted to figure out what I could do to make my sound better, make my sound unique, figure out what I'm really good at and what I'm really not so good at, and try to make a beautiful product. And this will bring us to the Romantic period. In the Romantic period, I will be singing Down by the Salley Garden by Ivor Gurney. Thank you. Going back into the Romantic period, I am going to maximize my techniques in clay, and I'm going to start a journey into 2D. I'm not much of a drawer, and I definitely have more of a painterly approach to things in the beginning, but I always try to keep true to myself. Up above is a self-portrait, and I keep 3D elements. We have cut up cardboard and material to create depth and shadow, and it was really a step in a new direction for me. But being a studio art minor, there was no way I was getting around this. In this class in particular, we were doing a series of self-portraits. The one to the left is in black and gray. We have pointillism, and we also have like this geometric form that breaks up my face using values from the lights to darks to create the shadows. Then on the right, we have a play with color theory. Try to see what tones together would work to make a portrait and create the values in which the photo originally had. This journey was something new for me in terms of music because Down by the Salley Gardens is more of an art song. It's not something I'm used to singing. It's very delicate, and I'm not delicate by any means. So it took some adjusting for me to figure out how to make it work with my voice. Same with 2D. I'm used to building things with my hand, and it just takes some finesse to figure out what I'm doing. The last 2D image was a master copy of Montez. He did a portrait of his daughter. He's very much in the impressionism stages of art, and his style kind of meshed with mine. I really enjoyed the painterly approach, and I really enjoyed that you could see the image without it being a direct replica. My vase to the right is just like that. You know it's a tree, but it's not just a tree. It's a square tree, which isn't normal. I also used my same techniques, but kind of stepped back a little more and let the piece itself speak with other textures. And then we're going to get to the last two. These two vases are, I feel, the apex of my cake decorating and claymation jambalaya. They might be a little on the gaudy side, and I might have put everything from the kitchen into the pot. But it really shows how versatile this art form can be. I have flowers, I have filigrees, I have leaves, I have shell borders. And these two pots, unlike the first set of pots, are made through hand building techniques, which basically means I didn't use a wheel, built it by hand. I made coils, coiled it up, smoothed it out, and then decorated it. These two pots are where I felt I finally had cake decorating pot piece. And from this point, I'm going to refine myself in what we'll call the neoclassical period. And I will be beginning with Memory from Cats by Andrew Lloyd Webber.
In the
Thank you. Going back to my neoclassical period, I'm taking things from my past, from my present, and mushing them together. Memory is a good example. It's not so far out there, like Diva's Lament, but it's not 100% classical, like Lascia, pianga. Memory, to me, is that good in-between. It really showcases the beautiful lines, the round sound, but it has that little bit of drama. And in this period of my life, I'm taking my old forms, my old designs, and I'm refining them in such a way. The mask above is my black and white mask. I got rid of the cake decorating skills, but I kept the texture. I added the texture, the brows, the under eye, the lip, and the overall form is more uniform, it's smooth, it's very much more symmetrical. It's all the things the other pieces weren't, but still keeping to myself. The same with these two pieces. Both of these I decided to venture out into a new medium. It was paper clay, and I was able to make these smooth edges. The first mask on the left is very beautifully smooth on the sides, but there's the cool texture on the top. And I did add a little bit of my decorating just because I wanted to see if I could do it with paper clay as well. I mean, why not? And then the mask on the right, I completely did smooth all the way around to show that I could make something super refined, and then I just added that little bit of filigree. So it kind of didn't end up looking like my other two pots. This also journeys into my 2D. I'm taking an art class, a drawing class at UCF, and we are trying to learn the fundamentals of drawing. You can't really just go in there and create if you don't know what you're creating. And it's through observation that we start doing little exercises like drawing people's noses at the coffee shop, drawing people's eyes when you're sitting down, drawing mouths when people are showing different emotions. This time in my life, we're also going to create more structural pieces. To the left, you'll see there's no shading in this cow skull. It's all just lines. These lines curve and create contours that really show the inset of the eyes, that show the folds of the fabric. It's understanding these principles of drawing that make my work better. It's the understanding that I can't just draw it. I have to know why I'm doing it. I have to know how to get here. And of course I can push it further and come out with a full piece, but then you lose all the beautiful, intricate lines, and you lose the journey to this discovery. The piece to the right is what we call a room in perspective. So I have my horizon line, and based off my horizon line, I build the room around it with vanishing points, with 2-point, with 1-point perspective. All of these things come together with these stacked boxes, skulls, things in the background, the room, and it's very much like math. You can't get to the end unless you start at the beginning. And it's the same with music. You can't hand me a piece and just be like, oh, perform this today. Well, you could, but I'd still have to go through the process. And that's what this journey in my art class was figuring out this process to get to the end result. And this will bring us to present day. In present day, I will be performing Never Enough from The Greatest Showman by Benj Pasek and Justin Hall.
Stay this way.
Thank you. In this present day period in my life, I'm really trying to push myself. I normally don't do pop. It's not my thing. And this piece in particular is kind of like the happy medium. It has a little pop and a little musical theater. And this really much translates into my journey. I am not much of a drawer. But with the foundations that I've been given, I can create beautiful things. The piece you see above is, yes, I know, another self-portrait, but this one's different. This one has structure. This one is built with a concept called straight line inspection. And what you do is you take your high point, your low point, your left point, and your right point. You build that diamond. And that's all this piece started off as, was a diamond. And then as you go from each section, you find the new high point, the new high point, the new high point, connecting each of these lines until you get a really solid form, using inner contours to figure out where the placement of the facial features go. There's substance there. And this is very much the same in music. You have to have a start. You have to have rhythm. You have to have technique. You have to have the pitches. You have to know the words. You have to know the phrase in order to make the structure of the piece. Before you can really develop it into something so musical, so beautiful, it has to have a start. And I feel in my artistic journey, it's really showed me that I need to take things back sometimes. And I need to start at the beginning. I can't just push for what I want in the end. Here I have an example of 3 skeletons. The one on the left is the start of my career, all the way to the one on the right, which is midway in the semester. The first one you see, I just kind of went for it. I wasn't exploring the lines, I didn't care. Well, I did care. But I was trying to figure it out on my own. And he's not proportional, it's a little wonky, and there lacks structure and detail. As you progress to the next one, you can see in the joints that there's more substance, there's more interesting lines, there's better form, it's more in proportion, leading to the last one, where I was able, in the same amount of time, to draw a full skeleton from top to bottom, add all the little fine details, add all the curves, and just by discovering and using these concepts and not trying to rush the process, not just wanting to draw a skeleton. When I was drawing the skeleton, I was drawing the shapes in which I saw, not, oh, this is a femur, this is a skull. It was, no, these are little curves and little dots that make a rounder shape. And that really helped me progress not only as a 2D artist, but a musical artist as well. These were our homework assignments. And again, you can see the same progression. And not as detailed, but it is in proportion. I'm following certain steps, leading to the last one, where the lines are very defined, everything's very much in proportion. You can feel the structure, you can see it. And that was the end goal. And that's the end goal of the music. You want to be you want to be stable, you want to have structure, you want to be ready, and you don't want to just wing it. This helped me in my paintings as well, because now that I have a sense of perspective, I was able to paint something a little more on the realistic side, a little beach scene, and then I was able to take those same concepts and move into something more my style, something again more impressionistic, very painterly. I was able to still create those beautiful smooth color transitions, beautiful shading, and still keep true to myself, but using the fundamentals I've learned along the way. And this brings me to my final journey in my 3D life. I finally went from the far opposite of my ceramics. This is made with polymer clay, and it was for my narrative sculpture class. So not only am I just creating one thing, I'm creating an environment, I'm creating a scene, I'm making something that you can look at and you can create your own story. This looks like it's straight out of a storybook. You have a little mouse and his Christian Louboutin shoe house, his little garden, his little pond, having a good old day, cleaning up around the house. And that is what art's meant to do. It's supposed to be able to tell you a story. Same with music. We're telling you a story. We're trying to make something relatable, something beautiful, something that you are going to remember as an audience. And this brings me to my last slide. This photo of myself was my branch out into digital design. It was a self-portrait of me, as Lady Francis me, and I used textures and just values to create the depth and the beauty behind it. Is it perfect? No. But I try, and I try to push myself. I try to keep pushing myself, to keep expanding my musical repertoire, to keep expanding where my art will go. And that's the beauty of the Sanctuary of Sight and Sound. It might not always be beautiful, it might not always sound great, but you learn on the journey. You learn from the observations. You learn from the techniques. And it becomes such a beautiful place. Thank you for joining me today in the Sanctuary of Sight and Sound.